Praise the Lord. I will give thanks to God with my whole heart in the company of the congregation. Great are the words of God, studied by all who delight in them. Full of honor and majesty is God's work, and God's righteousness endures forever. Friends, we welcome you as we gather the family of Ruth Shirley. We celebrate Ruth's life by singing songs, sharing stories, and hearing her unique call of discipleship from a life lived faithfully committed to God's call. May God grant us grace that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, in death, resurrection. Our first hymn is in memory of Ruth's mother, who often was heard humming this song. Let us stand and sing hymn number 528, Nearer My God to Thee. and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways, even before a word is on my tongue. O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limit of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you, and the night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them had even yet existed. How weighty to me is your thoughts, O God, how vast is the sum of them. I try to count them, but they are more than the sand. I come to the end, and I am still with you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
A few words before the 23rd Psalm. I met Ruth about 15 years ago at the Women's Benedictine Monastery in Mount Angel. We became better acquainted as we shared rides to and from events there. At some point, about 12 years ago, she hired me as her spiritual director. Although, if you know Ruth, I was more of a companion than a director. We first met in my home office, then at the Regent, Mary's Place, Lydia's house. I don't recall how we discovered our mutual appreciation for Bobby McFerrin's version of the 23rd Psalm. However, we began and ended our sessions listening to it. First on my CD player, then my iPad, when we met at the Regent. She was very clear that this version was to be heard at her memorial service. As her cognitive abilities declined during one visit in Lydia's house, she took my iPad for a ride on the seat of her walker. I suppose to share our treasure with other residents. She did, after all, understand that she was their chaplain. I switched to playing it on my phone, thinking it would be harder for her to kidnap my phone, which one day she took from me, perhaps fascinated by music coming from this little box. I do recall that during one of our later visits, she sang along with the music, remembering every word. So to honor her request, to honor her, here's Bobby McFerrin's 23rd Psalm and Ruth's gift to you.
The Lord is my shepherd, Before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge with all honor and due respect that Ruth was a tough cookie. And each of us, in the context of our own particular relationships with her, will have a sense of what that means for us. The scripture that Ruth chose for this time, the 139th Psalm, was important for her because it portrays a God that she had come to know, particularly in the second half of her life. This is a God who knows her fully, from the outer shell, the surface, the appearances of the body, clear on through to her heart and soul, to the depths of her very being. This is a God who knows her fully, and not only knows her, but accepts her and loves her for who she is. Through her trust in this love, Ruth finds both the desire and the courage to know herself more fully, with all of her unique quirks and idiosyncrasies, her likes and dislikes, her fears and her hopes, her talents and her shortcomings. Through her trust in this love, she finds a path toward understanding, accepting, and loving herself more fully. And as she loves herself more fully, she becomes empowered to share that love with others. You might even say that she feels compelled to share that love in service to others, as she came to understand them more fully and to see them through eyes of grace. Ruth and I began our conversations regarding this memorial service some years back, after the service in which we celebrated the life of her husband, Al. Following one of those rather lengthy conversations, it said that it seemed she had come to understand her life through the lens of a spiritual journey. And that journey was primarily a journey of healing. She said that was indeed how she viewed her life, as a journey of offering herself for the healing of others, as well as intentionally naming her own need for healing and committing herself to learning and growing through that journey toward healing, the journey that she shared with trusted sojourners. My sense is that there are at least a couple of different chapters in that journey of healing. In an earlier chapter of her life, her vocation of healing was known through her work in nursing and healthcare administration. But in the second chapter of her life, her vocation of healing took a more spiritual focus on the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Being the lifelong learner that she was, she followed this focus into yet another graduate school program, seminary, and not just any seminary, but Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California, where her brother David was a professor of Christian education. It was there that she connected with David's good friend and colleague, Derwin Foster, who served as a professor of theology for the seminary. Through Ruth's own reflections, it's clear to me that Derwin was a spiritual guide, a mentor, who helped her to open to a deeper understanding of who God is and how to find herself in and to give herself over to that vital, life-giving, loving journey of relationship that I described earlier. A key step in that journey was coming to terms with some wounds from her earlier life, the impact or the burden of which she still carried with her, much like many of us find our own lives impacted from our earlier years, wounds from our earlier years and experiences. I have a clear sense that Ruth, in facing and growing through her encounter with that residual pain, became what the renowned priest Henry Nouwen described as a wounded healer, one who makes the fruit of their own journey of healing available as a gift of support, a gift of hope for others. It was clear that Ruth found and shared hope in and through her own family, particularly in the loving synergies of her partnership with Dell. In their deep pride in the fruit of that partnership found in their 3 sons, Mark, Ben, and John, and in the great cherished gift of their grandchildren. She found hope through the people in this congregation as she shared with them in worship, in our adult learning community where her passion for her lifelong learning was very clearly modeled, or in singing with our choir, where she shared the meaning that she found in the anthems as she prepared them to sing. One member of the adult learning community said that she found hope in the simple act of sharing a walk with Ruth, in whom she found a generous listening ear. Maybe you found hope when Ruth visited you in the hospital as she volunteered as a chaplain for our congregation, or as a resident in the region where she was also volunteering as a chaplain while living there herself, and as Diana said, later on through in Mary's and Lydia's places. Ruth lived to serve. She loved to serve. And as her dementia progressed, she found it challenging to serve in the ways she would if she could. Many of you have your own Ruth stories. We'll have an opportunity to hear some of them a little bit later in the service. But I also encourage you to find members of Ruth's family or other sojourners at the reception following and share your own Ruth stories with them. An appropriate bookend to Ruth's choice of the 139th Psalm comes in the popular hymn to love, found in the 13th chapter of Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. In it, Paul describes our relationship to love as a process of maturing. From and through our childhood and our childish ways, toward our adult lives, where we begin to see God in our own lives more clearly. He says, now we see indistinctly as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. My knowledge is imperfect now. Then I will know, even as I am known. So these words speak to that journey of vulnerability, of trust, of a growing sense of intimacy with self, with others, with God. These things don't happen automatically. They require courage, dedication on our own part, alongside much encouragement and commitment from others who journey with us. Ruth understood this and found herself filled with gratitude, with a deep sense of thanksgiving and appreciation for all who journeyed with her. The passage from Paul ends with these famous words. There are, in the end, 3 things that last: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. According to the word count on my computer, you just have 1,000 words. But I invite you to take out your service bulletin and look at the picture of Ruth on the front. I love that Ruth's family picked this picture for this service. In it, they said they saw the warmth and love that Ruth had shared with them. It was a blessing that only grew and deepened in the later years. I see that same warmth and love that Ruth shared so generously within the life of this congregation, into the life of the Halsey and Shed churches when she served as their pastor, where they helped to shape her and her vocational ministry. And you are all here because you have been touched by forms of that love in your own relationship with Ruth. The love that is lasting in the sense that we have been touched by it and are encouraged to share it in turn. I see it that way. I hope you do too. Amen. You see in this next portion that we're going to be remembering Reverend Ruth. And the point here where it says memories from friends and family, there are two names there, but that's because they form the bookends for what we hope is a sharing from some of you with your own stories and reflections. And so John is going to get us started, and he will show you that there is a microphone on the stand here in front. And so we will invite you to come forward, and please be careful to make sure that you speak as directly as you can in the microphone, because all of us will hear better that way. So John, I'm going to invite you up to help get us started. As John's coming up, I'll say that this time will be closed with some beautiful music from Ruth's granddaughter, Beth, who will be playing the cello.
I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. I've really appreciated it. It means a lot to us. I know it meant a lot to Mom as well. I also want to thank Tim and Diana and Linda for their beautiful words and meaningful words, and the choir and Craig for their beautiful music. It all was just perfect for Mom, and she would have just loved it. So, as I was thinking about what to say about Mom, the first word that came to my mind was headstrong. I think she was headstrong in a lot of ways, and sort of the earliest story that I remember that kind of describes that was her falling out of a tree in China when she was like 10 years old, and she broke her leg, and she had a scar the rest of her life. And she showed me that scar, and I sort of think about that. I'm sure she had no business being in that tree, but there she was. And she, that was just always a sign to me of her sort of chutzpah, just her drive, so that image has kind of stuck with me her whole life. Another amusing story that if you read her obituary was in there, when she first met my dad, Dell, it was at this church, and after church she invited him over to her house to read the Sunday comments. And he replied, "Oh, I read the Sunday comments." And she said, "Well, she can read them again." And he did, and eventually they were married. So just another example of her will exerting itself. And then the third one is, as a young mother, she became a PhD, which took a lot of doing, with 3 young boys at home and all the studying that had to go into that. And so to allow that to happen, she had to make certain arrangements at home. And one of those was teaching me how to cook so that I could make dinner for the family. And I'm so thankful that she did that, because to this day I still love to cook. She also taught me how to sew. I don't sew so much anymore, but anyway, the cooking really stuck with me. And then she had a real love for the outdoors, and some of that was manifested in different ways. Another story from her childhood that I remember hearing about was she and her brother David playing a mulberry tree in front of their house in California. I think that part of that was to sort of escape troubles. That was a difficult time in their lives as they were moving home from China, and the family was separated, and that was kind of their refuge, as I understand it. And maybe that was the start, or one of the starts, of her sort of love of being outdoors and in that world. As we were growing up, camping was one of the biggest highlights of our life. I remember looking forward to that every summer. And I always thought that was something that my parents wanted to do for us, and I really loved it. I thought they both loved it. It turns out Dad wasn't really like it. It was Mom. So, I'm sure he enjoyed it too, but it was me and her. So that was another manifestation of her outdoors love. As we progressed later in her life, and she was living over at Lydia's house at the Mennonite Village, I'd come visit her on Saturdays. We'd always go for walks outside unless the weather was absolutely atrocious, which which I hadn't put that walk, because she just loved going out for walks. And she, her cognitive abilities were failing, but she still would seek out things to talk to and talk about. She would tell the ducks how beautiful they were. She would, anytime anybody walked by with a dog, she would offer to adopt the dog. It's because obviously they didn't think about their dogs, but she wanted that dog. She loved animals too. And then everybody that we meet, she talked to, her conversations didn't always make sense, but they were always very patient, so they could sense, that there was a connection that she was trying to forge with them. And that one-on-one connection was something that I think, especially later in life, became increasingly important to her. I think it was important all along, but sort of the one-on-one connections, I remember just lots of instances of her kind of seeking those out. My cousin Ken, who's here today, would have long conversations with my mom. I remember seeing Thanksgivings when we would gather. My cousin Sandra talks about how walking with her or talking with her was like closing a gap between her experiences and yours. Another cousin of mine, Lynn, when she was a teenager, I think, and my parents were newly married, living in Sleds, she came and visited, and my mom sewed her this beautiful dress, which we found a picture of. But Lynn said that even more important to her than that dress, which she really didn't cherish, was the time Mom spent on her just one-on-one. And that was kind of another example of that. And then I just remember car rides. She would always seek out excuses for car rides, so she'd take me to college or pick me up from college at the end of the school year, and use that as a time to just have some of those one-on-one conversations. She was a minister, as you know, but later in life, I think she evolved into more of a chaplain, and I think that was a special role for her, because again, it was that one-on-one communication with the person that I think she really was excelled at and seeked out. And then as the layers started to peel off later in life, that sort of hard-edged nature that sometimes you saw just kind of melted away, and what was left was just a kind of a pure love. And you could see that, times by just looking directly into her eyes, you just formed this connection, and it was just like she was beaming pure love to you. And so that was, I think, her true nature, kind of finally coming out of her, and so that was what we wanted to see. Thank you.
My name is Leo. Ruth had a pastor's heart, and I'm here today with my wife Melissa, who is Ruth's niece, and our daughter Rebecca, her great niece. Ruth very graciously invited me into her family to be a part of her family. And I remember many times we had the privilege of going down to her home, but she planned the memorial service for both of my parents, and that will always mean a great deal to us. And she also performed the ceremony for our daughter Rebecca and her husband down there. And that was a very, very special time. And so I remember her counseling with us and talking with us and sharing good times in her Seymour house down there in Tangent. And it was quite an experience. So she holds a very special place in our hearts. And we have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Ruth is up in heaven with the Lord right now at this time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Steve Jaquith. I grew up in this church with John. We're the same age and have been friends since I don't know how long. So I have many, many memories of Ruth, but the one I've been thinking about over the last few days goes back to grade school. And the Jaquith family had gone over to the Shirley family's house and for a visit, and John and his brothers took me out to ride bikes, and they lived, what we used to say, out in Tules. And so the road was gravel, and riding an unfamiliar bike on deep gravel was not a skill I had yet attained in life. And so I wiped out and managed to get a whole lot of the road embedded in my knee. and was pretty shaken up. But Ruth had been a nurse, and she took me into the bathroom and sat me on the counter and got out her first aid kit and started one by one removing all of these pieces of pea gravel from my knee. And I was young enough to be pretty scared by what seemed to be a surgical procedure. But Ruth was wise enough not to talk about what she was doing. She said focus my attention on the cat who sat on the bathroom counter next to me. I want to say the cat's name was Lumpy. Was there a cat named Lumpy? Okay. This cat had a very deep purr, and the cat stared at me and purred this deep, soothing purr the entire time. And Ruth talked about how this cat didn't like just anybody, but this cat seemed to like me a lot, so I must be okay. And again, I wasn't focused on what was happening when she was, but instead she kept me, entertained with the cat and its purr. And so, just a nice memory I still have.
Ruth was my father's sister, and she was about 16 years younger than him. And our first story he used to love to tell us about her was when they had to flee China and the Japanese were coming in, he carried Ruth out to look over her pathway. And that was his job, to carry Ruth and watch over her and protect her. Well, what I wanted to share today was when John was talking about Ruth and looking, see the pure love. And we went to see her at the VA house. We didn't really know how to make it, tried to explain who we were. And I don't think she quite got that. She kept talking about her mother, her father, bringing pictures and such. And so we talked about that. But then Neil said, "Can I pray with you?" He got out the Bible and he started reading, and it's like a light came on in her eye. She came over and she stood by me and she started reading that scripture out loud with him, and she was just happy, and it was just wonderful because she knew that. That was something that was so deep and real in her heart that she knew that. And so we were pleased that the Lord brought us to do that, so she could have that experience. Thank you.
My name's Ken Meyer. I'm John's cousin, John and Mark's cousin. I have so many memories. One other one to mention. I think the headstrong part John talked about, I think there was some of that gone on between her and my dad over a Monopoly game, I think it was. And so we weren't super close when we were younger, but that softened over the years. To the point, my dad was in his 60s. He'd had a stroke. He was paralyzed on one side, weighed about 250 pounds. And my mom got cancer, had to go to the hospital for, I think it was 6 weeks. So Ruth came to Bray. And for a month, cared for her. I don't know how she moved him around, bathed him, moved him around. It was incredible. I was overseas at the time, but she was, when Pastor talked about serving, it was incredible.
Make it short and sweet. John mentioned about being headstrong. That's what I remember the first 30 years of my life. Over the time that she went to be a minister, as time progressed, like I saw the heart changing. And yeah, growing up was easy. It's probably not easy for most of us. But I can honestly say that toward the end of our life, as everyone's noticed, I can't really take away, but I have to. Like, for example, I'm interested in going to the store, buying some food, right? I want to get in and out, right? And my mom would actually turn to somebody randomly and walk over. "You have the most beautiful daughter. You look so beautiful today." And she stopped, and I'm thinking, I just want to go home. And I identify as a Christian, right? We're supposed to let our light shine, right? But I'm so busy with my life. But one thing that really struck about my mom, toward the end, was she enjoyed every moment of the day. Like wherever she went, she would reach out to the point where sometimes you have to know your audience, like, can I give you a hug to a complete stranger, and they're like that, you know, that's the way she gives, like, unconditional love. And so I thought, wow, I want to be like that. I want to take the time, because you don't know what someone's going through in their life. But my mom just saw everyone as, you're to the stranger over there, those two young ladies. God loves you, but that love is just radiating, she couldn't help herself. So that's what I love about it. I want to be like that. I want to be more like Christ. I want to be a ray of hope and love in someone's life, because you don't know what someone's going through. And so I just remember that part at the end. That pure, like John was saying, that pure love that lady, she didn't talk it. She lived it. She just lived it. And I know everyone, most of you, all of you will probably say, yeah, I can see that, or sense that. So, yeah. And we carry the light. Let us all carry that light. Lord, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. The next person you see is not guaranteed tomorrow. Right? Life is short, so that's my lesson. What am I going to do with my life? What to do? But she did it maybe more. Thank you.
friends suggested that she was probably lurking somewhere in this space. And I'm looking around for her. And I'm looking at all of you because you indeed are reflections of her. And some of you spend a lot of time in this space conspiring, breathing together with her. We have to be careful about how we talk about that in the time of COVID. But one way to say it is, some of you have shared a lot with Ruth. And so there is much to be missing and mourning, but there's also much to be celebrated. I invite you to join with me in closing prayer. God of grace, God of love, we have gathered in this time and place to pay homage to celebrate your love as we have known it through your child, Ruth Shirley. And we give thanks for that love and cherish it, whether that love comes in the form of headstrong direction or in the form of warm and inviting eyes that welcome us in with a complete element of grace. Help us to, as Ruth did, to learn in our own ways to trust in your love for us. Help us to be thankful for the challenges and the opportunities that we find to love, and help us to find the courage to share that love in turn. We offer all of this in the one who came, the one we knew as Jesus, who taught us your way of love, and in so doing taught us to pray together, saying, Our Father, Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. This closing hymn, some of you, I'm pretty sure, were here for Dell's memorial service. And this is the hymn with which we close Dell's memorial service. And the first time Ruth and I gathered to talk about her own memorial service, she was really clear that this would be the closing hymn. Just as she was really clear that that right granddaughter Annie of hers would be playing the cello in her honor. Those things were there from the beginning. So I invite you, as you are able, to stand or stand in spirit and join in singing, Lord, you come by the way shore, 344 and 89 Baptist 10.
For
these words assist you in your grief. May you walk gently through the world, keeping your loved one, keeping Ruth with you always, knowing that you are never parted in the beating of your heart.